My name is Satya Giordano. In the next 7 minutes, I'm going to tell you the untold story of our wireless world. I've been showing people how to reduce their exposure to wireless signals, also called electromagnetic radiation or EMF, since 2014, and I'd like to share some information about it, as the risks are still largely ignored in most countries. Fortunately, you don't have to live in a cave to make a significant reduction to your EMF exposure. A little information can go a long way. You just have to take the right steps. EMF stands for an electromagnetic field, which is a very broad term. However, in this video, it will only be used in reference to microwave frequencies, also called radio frequencies, that our common wireless devices produce, such as Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and cellular signals. The best way I've found to think about electromagnetic radiation from a health perspective is to view it as an extremely new form of pollution. EMFs are all around us, today more so than ever before, but how harmful they really are is still very controversial. This is where the precautionary principle comes in, which has been used by engineers since 1729. Simply put, the precautionary principle says that if you don't have enough information to fully understand the risks involved with using something new, the safest thing to do is to avoid using it until you have the information you need to make a choice that you know is safe. In other words, when in doubt, be cautious. Fortunately, for many years already, some countries have been making significant efforts to protect their children from the microwave radiation produced by wireless devices. A great example of this is how, on the 29th of January 2015, France made history by banning Wi-Fi in nursery schools, requiring that the location of wireless routers be posted in all schools, requiring that cell phone ads must recommend that cell phones be held away from the head, and much more. It's also worth mentioning, on the note of playing it safe, that the wireless industry has been warning its financial investors of potential health-related lawsuits since 2014. And so far, all of the insurance companies have refused to insure the wireless industry against any EMF-related lawsuit. So why are most people not concerned? The answer lies in the fact that there are two kinds of safety levels for EMFs. One is used for electronics, and the other is used for humans. The kind of safety level used for electronics is based on the principle of interference, which accounts for the fact that even very weak wireless communication signals can affect, alter, and disrupt the functioning of an electronic device. On the other hand, the kind of safety level used to protect us humans is based on the principle of heat. It only accounts for how much the wireless signals can actually heat us up, which doesn't begin to happen until we are close to a very powerful antenna, such as the kind you may find on a large cell or radio tower. Just to confirm, the process of being heated up by wireless communication signals is basically the same process a microwave oven uses to cook food. So of course, that is a concern. However, the reality is that our entire body is just as much an electrical system as the devices we work and play with, since all of our cells communicate with each other through tiny electrical signals called bioelectricity. So, the principle of interference is actually very applicable to us as well, perhaps even more so than it applies to our devices, as much of our bodies are extremely sensitive. For example, consider that your brain is a far more complex electrical system than your computer or cell phone. Of course, the symptoms are very different. An electronic device may produce a garbled sound or an on-screen error message, while we may experience a rash or a headache instead. The bottom line is that the interference caused by wireless radiation is recognized as a threat to our electronic devices, so they are protected against it. Whereas with our bodies, the threat of interference caused by wireless radiation is not considered real, so we are given no protection. The International Commission on Non-Ionizing Radiation Protection, ICNIRP, is the organization that sets the safety standards for our wireless world. ICNIRP does not account for any health-related concerns unless the wireless signals are strong enough to significantly heat us up, which begins at around 10 million microwatts per meter squared. Since most countries use this heat-based safety level, we rarely hear about any EMF-related issues. However, in 2012, the BioInitiative Report, the most well-respected independent scientific review of the studies on wireless radiation and health, concluded that we are being affected by wireless communication signals at levels far below our current safety level. In fact, it lists 4 pages of biological effects that occur well below our heat-based safety level, showing that the risk of interference clearly applies to people as well as electronic devices. In order to account for the health-related risks of interference, and not just the risks from heating, the BioInitiative Report recommends a safety level that is 3.3 million times lower than our current heat-based safety level. Fortunately, countries like Switzerland have already taken a step in the right direction by making their safety level 100 times lower. It is also worth mentioning that the government in Sweden has recognized EMF sensitivities as an official disability since the year 2000. So how did we get here? It is good to remember that with many new technologies, no matter how useful they are, there is often a gap that can be decades long between the time that they are confirmed to be harmful and the time that the laws and the public perceptions actually change. For example, nuclear radiation was initially thought to be completely safe, to the point that it was even found in jewelry and makeup, and we continued to use it for many years without protection until we finally learned how to live with it in a safer way. When microwave radiation was first used for communication, it was also thought to be completely safe, until technicians working near antennas got cataracts on the inside of their eyeballs. As a result of that discovery, a safety level was eventually created to protect humans from being heated up by microwaves. However, that was 70 years ago, and we now have over 1,000 studies showing health effects occurring at exposure levels well below our current heat-based safety level. So we need to accept the fact that just because most of us don't feel wireless signals, it does not necessarily mean that they do not affect us. We also need to account for the fact that until our safety levels are based on interference instead of heat, we will be given very little protection. Fortunately, distance is one of the things that you can use to your advantage. Almost all wireless devices have antennas in them that send and receive information through microwave signals. So a cell phone or a pair of Bluetooth earbuds, for example, each have at least one antenna in them that generates microwave radiation. This is how wireless devices communicate with each other. It is useful to know that the strength of these signals will drop dramatically with distance. In other words, the farther you get from any kind of antenna, the lower your exposure will be. For example, moving a cell phone just 1.5 inches or 4 centimeters away from your body can make an 80% reduction to your exposure at the point of contact. So if you're not sure of where to place a wireless device on your body, I recommend keeping it as far away as possible from your vital areas such as your head and heart. If you're planning to become a parent, I also strongly recommend protecting your reproductive organs. As distance generally makes a significant reduction to our exposure, the priority in most situations is to keep wireless devices as far away as possible from children and sleeping areas. It is true that it is hard to avoid wireless signals in our world today, just as it is hard to avoid other forms of pollution. But that does not mean that you are powerless to protect yourself or that your efforts are pointless unless you achieve ideal levels. The real point here is whether or not we even acknowledge the concern in the first place. To quote Donnie Miller, "In the age of information, ignorance is a choice. So please choose wisely, at least for the children, as studies have shown that young people are much more sensitive to environmental toxins in general, EMFs being no exception." As my time permits, I offer free EMF phone consultations to anyone who owns or manages a school and would like to protect their kids. If you feel this message is important, please pass it on to family and friends, as well as groups, organizations, or anyone who could make a larger difference, such as schools, faith communities, or even your local and state representatives. Thank you for your time.